I'd just like to introduce ourselves. This is Nivriti from Nanda, Seattle, and my name is Jamuna.
The first song we'd like to sing this morning is called Come Gather Round by Swami Kriya.
Come gather round, let joy sing out today. Dawn now is breaking, and the mountains say, it's only light can make the darkness run. Lift up your head, greet the rising sun. Greet the rising sun. Some people think to harvest happiness by reading troubles, easing every stress. The trouble is that troubles never end. Get rid of one, and your face is grand. And your face is grand. It's in your heart, the songs of joy resound. You'll hear but echoes in the world around. Wind on a hill sounds lonely if you're sad, free if you're free, cheerful if you're glad. Cheerful if you're glad. Friends, come with me. We'll chant of battles won, shots not of anger. Joy will be our dawn. Before the light, the veils of sorrow rend. In inner freedom, all delusions end. All delusions end.
Our reading is taken from the book Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriya. This is week 32. The topic is, does God hide the truth? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In last week's reading, we saw that the great masters themselves counseled discretion in the dissemination of truth. The counter-argument is sometimes made, but the Lord doesn't hide. He reveals his beauty in the sunsets, his tender sympathy in the rain, his wrath in the thunder, his restless energy in the brooks, his power in the sunlight. There are exoteric truths, and there are also esoteric truths. There is that which is revealed impersonally and left up to us to interpret, such as the thunder and our perception of it as divine wrath, the rain and our perception of it as God's sympathy. But behind even God's most open expression, there lies impenetrable mystery. The wind blows where it wills, said Jesus in chapter 3 of the Gospel of St. John. You hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. And Sri Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, by me, the whole vast universe of things is spread abroad. By me, the unmanifest. In me are all existences contained, not I in them. God's hidden reality cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. India's Shankya philosophy states frankly, Ishwar, Ashita, God is not provable. A willingness to seek the underlying reality behind appearances is essential for those who would know God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning. It's always so charming to come to another colony to give Sunday service because it's a little like a dream. You know, everything is just the same but slightly different. So let's see what whispers I chose. I chose number 90. O Heavenly Father, fill my heart daily with the prayers and the love of some new saint who found Thee in ages bygone. Fill my heart with the love of all saints who have ever loved and found Thee. I'm going to hand this back to you. I found this extraordinary statement from Swami Kriya Nanda. He said, I am so weak and exhausted. Why don't I do a world tour? And that's really the essence of the topic this morning. Because where we find ourselves is in a world where we are asked to make an effort to see behind the most obvious reality. It's just not going to come tumbling down on us what's going on here, and a lot is going on here. In Swami's conversations from Yogananda, he quotes Master as saying, God doesn't want us to find out too soon. That's kind of, you sort of wonder, what kind of a God is that? But it creates an incredibly wonderful game of life, if you will. Because we come in at any particular time, again and again, with our ego intact and our karma tumbling down on us. And we're being asked to try to penetrate how we might best realize our true self within this complex universe. And the ego tries to get a hold of us. It really makes a good run for it. And it's just a matter of a play that we don't quite listen. We don't quite listen hard enough to see what the director is saying. And the director, God, is always speaking to us. And I love Swami's quote because it's like when you feel yourself being pulled down, in essence, into the lower chakras, where you're in fear and anxiety and doubt and unsureness. The thing to do, because it's built into the system, is to move higher, to bring your energy higher. Swami recognized he was in a place of low energy. I got to make it higher. How do you do that? You go out and serve others. This is the great rhythm of Nanda over the years. When we would find ourselves in financial straits, Swami would say, it's time to go out and share with all. Well, the logical mind thinks, well, so where does the money come if what we're doing is kind of combat financial straits? Don't worry about it. if you're doing the right thing and if you're pulling your energy up and if you're serving from the heart, it will all work out. And that's the big moment, to get to the place where you have faith and trust that if you take the steps, it'll all work out. And the interesting thing is, you have to take the steps first. You can't say, well, maybe if I do it, or give me a sign. But you have to take the step first and step right into it. And you have to ask the right questions of life. You know, there's that wonderful book that I'm always referring to because it has such a gem in it, and that's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Thank you, sir. Those titles just slip away. Man's Search for Meaning, and his essential thought in there is when we find a reason to go on, that's when we survive anything. Absolutely survive anything. When we can understand the why, then we can move on. There's a funny scene in one of Peter Sellers' Pink Panthers movies. I love those movies. I'll have to drag them out again and watch them. Inspector Clouseau, I miss him. I haven't seen him for a while. But I found this reference to him. So he's an inspector, and he's totally inept. But he has confidence. He knows he can do it, and he knows he's the best. So he walks into a hotel lobby, and he sees a dog lying there at the foot of a customer standing at the counter. And so he goes up to him and he said, "Does your dog bite?" And the man says, "No." And the dog looks pretty fierce, so he says the question again, "Does your dog bite?" And the guy says, "No." So Clouseau leans down to pet the dog, and it leaps up and bites him. And he says, "I thought you said your dog didn't bite." And the man says, "It's not my dog." So we're not always asking the right question. We're just off a little bit. You know, we're just off. There is a story about a man named Louis Zamperini, and I think recently a movie was made about him called Broken. And in the 1940s, he was determined. He had a very challenging background, but he was determined to get to the Olympics as a runner, and he just put his heart and soul into it. He was naturally very good, and he did make it to the 1936 Olympics. And then the war came along, and he was in a plane, and it was shot down, and he was on a raft in the ocean for 42 days, suffering greatly, not knowing what was coming next, and a lot of challenging things were coming next. But after the 42nd day, and I think they lasted on the raft for about 47, but after the 42nd day, and he had said to everyone that he was an avowed atheist, but he said to God in his moment of need, "If you free me, I will serve you." He made that declaration from the depths of his heart. Then he was captured by the Japanese and put into a POW camp, and things got worse and worse and worse. And what happened was he forgot about that conversation. He just forgot about that conversation. It became hidden way deep in his psyche. And he plotted revenge for years and years and years. He plotted revenge. And then he had a moment where that voice came to him again, where God spoke to him, didn't give up on him. He said, "You know, you made a promise." And there's something about that phrase that just gets me. It's so sweet, but it's also so intimate. God is just our most intimate friend. You know, you made a promise. And Lewis just woke up at that moment. And even though he was an avowed atheist, he took on the Christian faith. And that was the rest of his life, to pay back. Just a lovely, lovely story. But that's the way God reveals himself. He's not going to be provable in a test tube. He's not going to be provable in a science lab. The interesting thing is, what's going to happen with the scientist, and what has begun to happen with the scientist trying to find the truth, trying to find what is going on here, is they are beginning to recognize that they're searching for, what do they call them? They're searching for, I wrote it down. Begins with an N. Well, may not find it. Anyway, they're searching for a tiny, tiny, tiny particle, which is even tinier than anything we've ever found. And what happens is, when you're doing that, you're really concentrating. So that's one of the ways in which you get very still. And so they're having this moment where they're having an experience, basically an experience of eternity, because they're not being engaged by the outside world. Because the reality of the spiritual life, it's really in here. We don't have to go searching for it. And it's not a matter of some people have it and some people don't. It's within us. It's available within us. We can open that door. We can have those conversations. But it's not like, as the Master said, it's not like God's going to just broadcast to anybody, because if you're not receptive, if you have no attunement, I would bet that if you took a gong, do you have a gong? We have a big gong at our temple in Seattle. And sometimes at the thunder of Om, we hit that gong, and so that sound of Om just goes throughout the whole room. It's totally wonderful. And you can get yourself attuned to that sound. Well, if you took a big gong out into the thoroughfares, in front of a McDonald's, say, and let loose, nobody would recognize it. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't have the same effect. But because we've been meditating and tuning inward, we can feel that vibration. We can attune ourselves to that vibration and expand into that vibration. And we all have that system within us, which is awakening, awakening, awakening. So I've had a recent experience of God's continuing, what do I want to say, awareness of what I'm supposed to do in this life and how I'm supposed to proceed. I'm going to tell you a bit of a personal story. Back in 1986, I went to visit my twin sister on Bainbridge Island, and her husband was very resistant to the spiritual path. And Jennifer and I went out to lunch with him, and he got into a altercation with the waitress in which me in my ignorance thought I should say something about it. Ha ha ha. So in my best self-righteous voice, I said something about it. And I got blasted. And I was shunned from the family and told never to appear there again, ever. So I have spent my life, the last 30 years, very occasionally seeing my twin sister. We talk a great deal, but not seeing her, and not being a part of the family, which is a very interesting experience. But for years after that, decades, I was on my knees praying that I somehow find a way to find forgiveness in that situation. Because I just didn't want, my thought was, if I don't get it cleared out now, I'll have to go around with this individual again. And I don't want to do that. I want to get it clear now. So I prayed and prayed and prayed. And one day, 35 years later, I heard my voice in that luncheon conversation for the first time. For the first time, I heard how uppity up, self-righteous I sounded to my brother-in-law, who's a criminal lawyer and can take anybody down in a minute. And I thought, if I had been him and I heard that voice coming toward me, I would have responded just like he did. And I went, God, I have got to write a note to my sister. And then I went, no, you don't, you're right. You've got to write a note to your brother-in-law. So I sat down and I said, I want to ask your forgiveness for my part in this family riff. I hadn't heard what I sounded like. And if I had been you and heard that comment coming toward me, I would have responded in like kind. And I'm very sorry for that. And he took it, apparently, into the kitchen and set it down on the counter and said to my twin sister, why didn't she do this sooner? And I said to Jen, tell him, I never heard my part. I never heard it. And do you know, from that moment, the rancor that I had, frankly, I will admit, the joy I had in telling the story of being shunned from his family, dropped from me. It all went away. I couldn't feel it again. I can't touch it. I can't see him in that manner. Well, God was working his way through a karma that I really needed to embrace, just through hidden channels in my consciousness. When I got back from seclusion on May 31st this year, my brother-in-law called and said, I really need your help. Jennifer is disappearing into Alzheimer's, and I need your help caring for her. Could you come? And I looked at my calendar, and I knew that was God's hand all the way from that conversation in 1986. He kept track of me and kept track of what was going to be needed, what was going to be the next step. And for me, stepping into that household after all these years of living in Nanda communities has been unbelievable. It's just been unbelievable because I realize what it is we learn here, what it is we understand about what we're doing, what it is that happens to us when we open ourselves to the light. And I am alternately feeling horrified by what I see in front of me, and she is a very sweet girl, my twin sister. She's sweet and kind, and she says a lot of thank yous, and she's just disappearing before my eyes. And my relationship with my brother-in-law is respectful and loving, and we never have discussed the past. Only one reference, and I said, oh, that was a period when I wasn't talking to you. That's it. That's it. That's all that's been referenced. So what God is trying to reveal to us, it's not an intellectual thing. The hidden truth is not an intellectual thing. The hidden truth is you need me to get through what it is that's in front of you this time. And I'm here for you. It's that sweet voice. You know you made a promise. We all made a promise. We all have made a promise in this lifetime. And another time when I got a message from above, and it was, come closer to me. So that's the truth. That's the truth that is hidden, because we all walk around with it in many different guises. And God is right there, orchestrating it. I feel in my own experience, I had to do those prayers in order to come to that forgiveness experience, in order to be able to care for this lovely woman, my twin sister. And everyone says to me, oh, if she says she doesn't know who you are, you're probably going to be out of there. Or they say to me, if she doesn't know who I am, I'm out of there. I come down some mornings, she has no idea who I am, and I just state the facts. And then sometimes she'll be with me doing some project, and she'll say, where's my sister? It's all a curious, incredibly unusual play. And I'm reminded of a time when I was in Swami's dome at Crystal Hermitage, with Asha Praver especially, and Kamala, what was her last name? Silva, there we go. Kamala Silva was there, and she was also in Alzheimer's. And Asha, with this horrified look, turned to Swami and said, how can this be happening? And Swami said, it's only the mind. Because everything else is there. Jennifer is totally there. And you know, I'm helping to clean out her whole house, 40 years of her travels around the world. And there's many, many books of Yogananda with lots of markers in them and underlinings and all of that. So we have that to share. So let's see how I want to end with a quote by a man who was a mountain climber, and he climbed in the Himalayas. I don't know whether he ever got to the summit, but he said, when you are high up in the mountains, we're high up in the mountains here, when you are high up in the mountains, everything falls into place. Thank you.
This next song we'd like to offer is also by Swami Nanda. And we'd like to ask you at the end to sing along with us. And the last chorus goes, Luru Luru Lero, Luru Luru Lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Luru Lero, Luru Luru Lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. The secret of laughter lies in the laughing, not in the search for joy. It's a swallow winging on the wind, its innocence in a boy. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the singing, not in the song sung, welcome but never prayed. If you think that laughter lies in things, to things you'll be
Good morning. Much to tell you about, all good stuff. I want to start first, though, by thanking Nivriti and Jamuna for being with us today. It's just such a treat to have guest ministers, and next week we have 2 more. Also from Seattle, the spiritual directors, Sriman and Padma, will be joining us to do Sunday service next Sunday. After service today, we invite you to stay for some refreshments. And of course, if you're new and you have any questions, there are a number of us who'd be very happy to talk with you. And while you are enjoying each other's company, enjoy also our Maha Boutique sale in our new classroom up front. We are downsizing our inventory, and so we are offering many, many wonderful things for 70% off and more. Please join us, browse, and we'll even make deals beyond that. Okay. Coming up this week, we, of course, have our yoga classes on Wednesday evening and on Saturday morning. These are wonderful. We're so happy to be expanding our yoga program. And on Saturday, also, we will have a Learn to Meditate workshop, 3-hour workshop from 10 to 1. It's kind of a starter course for learning how to meditate. And so if you or someone you know would be interested in that, by all means, please join us then. Guru Night, a very special night at our community, will be in a couple of weeks on Saturday, August the 24th. And I won't go into all the details on what that entails, but talk to Lorna if you are able to help with any of the setup, or if you just need to know a little bit more about it, what to expect, and please join us for that evening. It goes from about 6 to after dark, and it's absolutely beautiful. We have our Raja class coming up in a month. I just wanted to remind you of that if you are interested in the art and science of Raja Yoga. And just 2 other things. If you are available on Wednesday about 4 o'clock, we are going to be carpet cleaning throughout the temple, and we're going to have to move a lot of things out. And so for about an hour, maybe about 4 o'clock on Wednesday, if you'd like to join us, that would be very helpful. And then one more thing, beginning next Sunday, and probably for a couple Sundays after that, we want to take your picture. For a long time, we've wanted to have a board with everyone's photo and name underneath it. So for new people and for those who don't know each other all that well, it's an opportunity to say, that's what that person's name is. That's what they look like. So we'll be doing a little portrait photography. Vajra Madden has offered to take pictures, and we'll try to catch you next week on that. Great. Thanks very much.